Okay, good morning, good evening, depending where you are. If you're in Canada, it's Eastern Standard Time. It's in the morning. It's just after 11 o'clock in the morning. And if you're in Israel, Jerusalem time, it is just after 6 o'clock in the evening. Today, we're honoring Rabbi Meir Kahane, um, who was murdered in 1990. Um, as a follower of Rabbi Kahane, we're all followers of Rabbi Kahane. His truth still is the truth. And there's an incredible feel in Israel. And we're going to be talking about that today. Baruch, you're there in Jerusalem. The hall is just filling up. What can you tell us right now about the people coming? Are there Knesset members coming? What's the situation there right now? Maybe you didn't hear. Okay, so Mayor, you could hear me right now, correct?
I can, yes.
Okay, so tell me, so we've come a long way, being shunned, the rabbi kicked out of the Knesset, every form of defamation, and here we are today with it's so clear to many, many Jews in Israel that Rabbi Kahane was correct, and we even have a new administration, the Trump victory in the United States, and we have people who are saying exactly what the rabbi was talking about. Build the temple, throw out the enemy, annex the territories. What could you tell us? What could you add right now, Mayor, to this day we're commemorating?
Yeah, it's really remarkable. It's remarkable that 2 weeks ago today, as a result of the election victory for the Trump camp, there was a certain euphoria, there's a certain happiness that all proponents and advocates of Israel experience. What is a shame is that this newfound optimism that we have isn't based on anything that's happening in Israel, really. It's based on what's happening in the United States. And that's not the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
We are all happy. We're all optimistic. We're all hoping for a change of the types of politics that we saw, which have in essence handcuffed Israel from doing what needs to be done. And it isn't because of what the Knesset has done. Now, even though Israel or the soldiers have fought valiantly to defeat Hamas in both Gaza and Hezbollah up north in southern Lebanon, it's actually the optimism that we all express today is a result of what happened in America. What Israel is still suffering from, with the exception of those right-wing elements, which basically said that Oslo was a 3-decade-long mistake. The optimism that we experience today is that we finally will have on January 20th of 2025 an American government which will allow Israel to do the things that Israel should always have taken upon itself to do.
Yes, 100%. 100%. It would be amazing if the government was sworn in right now, and probably some of the officials from the government would attend the memorial right now in Jerusalem. That would be an incredible feat, an incredible accomplishment that we stay with the emis from back then. In the interim, what do you see happening from the Biden administration try to put a fork in the road right now to try to, I don't know if the word is punish, but sanction Israel in some way? What do you see happening in the next 8 weeks until he's sworn in?
Well, there have already been a couple of things that have happened which are not to Israel's advantage. I guess chief among them is the fact that the Biden administration, in fact, Amos Hochstein has already arrived in the Middle East, in Beirut, trying to negotiate a ceasefire, which in essence would end the war prematurely to Israel's disadvantage. What they're talking about is they're talking about doing a ceasefire, which would prevent Israel from winning the war. It would certainly prevent Israel from destroying its enemies, Hezbollah. The ceasefire that they talk about, if and when initiated at the United Nations, is going to have its own number. Never mind, in 2004 we had
2 shekels?
Resolution 1559. In 2006 we had Resolution 1701. Both of those resolutions were supposed to make sure that southern Lebanon was demilitarized south of Litani River. That
Right.
didn't happen. Those resolutions were not only worthless, they actually facilitated the situation which allowed Hezbollah to go from a militia into a full-fledged army. And Israel tragically went along with it. If any lessons are to be learned of the lessons of history, is that the United Nations resolutions are never to Israel's favor, and anything that has been done by the Biden administration during its 4 years have never been. You mentioned sanctions that have been brought against Israel, sanctions that have been brought against Israeli citizens and companies. Israel, what Israel needs to do is for another 62 or 63 days. And then
Absolutely.
with the expectation that we all have, be allowed to do the job the way it is capable of doing the job.
What?
Also, I just must add this. Anyone in Israel knows that there's a tremendous and the left trying to upend Bibi Netanyahu remaining 2 years in office. And what's remarkable was in 1988 when Rabbi was running for a only we spoke about a deep state element him from running. That deep state element has now morphed into a giant, which is now trying to prevent anyone who is on the right of Caesar from having a voice in Israeli future or Jewish destiny.
Right. Mayor, there was a little bit of volume or cutting in and out of your of what you were saying. I'm just wondering, maybe log off quickly, log back on, so it will be crystal clear. I could hear everything from from the hall, but with you, it was a little bit of muffled.
Is it possible to mute the sound coming from the hall? Because
No.
Yep,
right
I'll do
now
it.
it seems to be just background noise.
Um,
I'll mute it.
no, I think you just turned the volume down now for the hall, so
Okay.
we might be good.
If
Might be good. It's nice to see that it's filling up.
Yeah, I need to lean in to see the faces because I'm only using a smartphone.
Right.
Yeah. Unfortunately, here it is, 30 plus years later, and Israel is waking up. Not all of it, but some of Israel is waking up to the reality of everything that the rabbi had cautioned about, that warned about, has come to fruition. The rabbi once said it's going to be either Kahane or Arafat sitting in the
Right.
Knesset. And if one looks at what happens in the Knesset just yesterday, Ayman Oda, an Arab party, screaming and have to be dragged off, screaming, calling the Jewish nationalists terrorists. It's an outrage. It is an absolute outrage, and it's exactly everything that the rabbi had cautioned and warned us about. And the choice that we were given at one point was we have to decide if Israel was going to be a Jewish and Zionist state, if it was going to be a democracy which allowed these people to try and subvert Israel from within. And right now we see that they're trying to subvert Israel from within, not only from the Arab camp, but from the leftist camp as well.
100%. Now, Mayor, I caught a little bit of what Ayman Oda was saying, but there were so many things going on, I didn't really pay that much attention. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, well, let me just speak in general terms. He's not the only one. We have a couple of Arab Knesset members elected democratically. They run on a platform which is decidedly anti-Israel. These are people who every one of them, when asked time and again about the casualties, the deaths that Israel has suffered in Gaza on October 7th, and the casualties that it has suffered since, they were asked on many occasions by various media why they, these are Israeli Arab Knesset members, have referred to the Hamas terrorists who have fallen as martyrs. Now that in and of itself is a violation of all the rules of the Knesset.
Right.
And yet Israel is so concerned about what BBC might say or CNN that Israel has dealt with them in a very gingerly fashion rather than remove them from the Knesset. It happened again yesterday. Ayman Oda gets up and he starts screaming at some of the, excuse me, he starts screaming at some of the nationalist members of the Knesset. And when the deputy, the speaker of the Knesset, banged his gavel and told him that he was out of order, he simply raised in voice and continued his loud screed against Israel and those people who think that the war needs to be won. In essence, he was defending everything that our enemies, and he was forcibly removed. It was a joke. It was a joke the way he was forcibly removed. And as he's removed, he continues to scream his anti-Israel epithets. This is the end of Israel. What's remarkable is that the left of center camp in the same Knesset session, rather than denounce what Ayman Oda and what the others, Mansour Abbas, Ahmad Tibi, that entire ilk in Israel, instead of denouncing them, the left of center started screaming at Bibi Netanyahu, telling him that he should step down, that he should resign, that he didn't belong there, that he was the one who was responsible for the Jewish death. All along in the Arab world, they viewed those people who were killed by Israel as martyrs. They are still martyrs for them. There's something terribly wrong. This is what the rabbi warned us about in 1984, 1988, until his murder in 1990.
Absolutely. Bora, we can see you there. Can you let us know what is going on in the hall right now? Are there any Knesset members attending the memorial for the rabbi?
You talking to me now?
Yes.
Okay, good. As far as I can see, there aren't any, at the cemetery earlier, Itamar Ben-Gvir was there, by himself. I don't expect him to show up, and I don't expect any Knesset members to show up.
Okay, because last year there were Knesset members that were there.
Because he showed up with the guys that he was elected with.
Okay,
Which was the whole tumult, so
right.
this year, I don't expect anybody.
Okay,
Just as well. Because I don't expect anything from them, and so I don't really care if they come or not.
okay. What seems to be the mood right now regarding Rabbi Kahane's vision, everything that he spoke about now in Israel with the current situation?
Look, and as far as the grassroots Israeli, there are plenty of people today that will openly say Rabbi Kahane was right. And they'll, the other day somebody said to me, he was on a kibbutz and all the kids were walking around with Rabbi Kahane was right shirts. You know?
Okay,
So if you're intellectually honest, you'll admit that he was right, whether you agreed with him in the past or not. But our problem is always that it's not the rank and file. It's the people that run the show are continue to be anti to the point where the things that come out of their mouths sounds like something that will come out of the Third Reich. Such
Right.
anti-Semitism, as self-hating Jews that it's unbelievable. And these are guys who went to the army. these are guys that were, looked up to, and they're the worst of the worst. So it's just they feel that the control is slipping away, slipping through their fingers, and they're doing everything possible to prevent us from ever taking over. So I think
Mhm.
that's the missing link. The missing link is that Rabbi Kahane was right and he said the right things, but there never was really a real plan to take things over here, and I don't see any viable plan. I really don't.
Right.
It's not going to happen through the Knesset, and it's not going to happen through the court system. I mean, the only thing that we see that's positive is the army. We see the army guys fighting and giving their lives. And my son was in Gaza for 4 months, and he said it's like two different worlds. It's like you go into Gaza, it's a whole different world. Everybody's together. There's no politics. There's everybody's just for the purpose, the cause, to defeat the enemy. And but he says you leave, you come out of Gaza, and all you hear is the same old crap that the press feeds us, and the
Mhm.
politicians, and the courts, and the judges, and so on. So again, like I said, I think that we have to. I think that as great as Rabbi Kahane was, he was kind of like naive of how he's ever going to take over here, thinking that he's going to get elected and his party's going to grow and it's going to grow, and finally at some point he's going to be the majority. He's going to be able to take over with a government, and they are not going to let that happen. It's not going to
What
happen.
was his last book, Revolution,
The referendum or revolution. It's on sale
Referendum
tonight.
Revolution? Right,
It's on sale tonight.
right.
Listen, as I promised you, there will be some people here tonight that I want to put on to speak.
Yes.
Followers of Rabbi Kahane. We have one here right now. Moshe Belogorodsky, originally from the USSR, made his way to USA, and now he's here in Eretz Israel, Beit El. He lives in Beit El here. We're talking to Mayor Weinstein
Hey,
and Mayor
Hello.
Jalowitz.
I remember those guys when they were young, man.
Yes.
Remember when he was young. What you doing, guys?
You're live. You're on live. The whole world is hearing.
The whole world
Yes.
is hearing.
Say
Okay.
something intelligent.
Something intelligent. Just saw Dvar Torah, פירוש on פרשת חנן, ויעשו את הרע בעיני השם להכעיסו. And the Jewish people did evil in the eyes of Hashem to make him angry, which is a pretty vague statement. It's not clear what exactly did they do. What does it mean that they made him angry? So Sforno comes and he gives the following explanation. He says, yeah, what this means is that there were parts of Jewish people who wanted to do away with divine providence, with Shekhinah, who wanted to push away their obligation towards the Torah, and that is the evil that makes Hashem angry. That's what I have to say, gentlemen. It's a pleasure
Wow.
speaking with you and an honor.
Thank you very much.
You heard it from us. I'm following what he just said. I want to add to that because this past Shabbat we had where I davened on Shabbat, we had a Rabbi Kahane and Rabbi Kalbach Shabbat joint and we had a kiddush in memory of them, and they let me speak, and I brought down something Rabbi Kahane wrote in the Or Rayon, in the book Jewish Idea, and he brings down this midrash that nobody's ever heard of. It's called Mechilta Yitro, the Masechet Amalek. a really strange that no one's ever heard of it before. But in it, it says that Hashem tells us that you can't join with the evil, with the Rishayim, with the evil, even for the purpose of teaching them Torah. Rabbi Kahane explains, he says, that even if you think that you're going to be able to teach them Torah, there's a better chance of them teaching you to be evil. So just stay away from them. Don't even try. And I think that's, where we're now confronted with true evil. We see, besides, of course, the enemies, the people amongst us, former. Oh, here I see now, there is a Knesset member here. Rabbi Kreuzer's son. שלום.
Good.
אתה יכול להגיד משהו לחבר'ה בחוץ לארץ?
בעברית או
באנגלית,
באנגלית?
באנגלית. It's
Hi, it's good to see you.
Rabbi Knesset Kreuzer, a member of Knesset.
Yeah.
And
Welcome.
I'm really sorry. I see that my father is speaking right now.
okay,
So I got
Rabbi Kreuzer speaking, so he's going in.
sorry to tell him.
Okay,
Okay.
he gives us there is a Knesset member, I was wrong, I apologize. He's of course with the Otzma party, with Itamar. His father is the Rosh Yeshiva, Rabbi Kreuzer of the
Right.
Yeshiva of the Jewish idea. And he's speaking right now. I'm outside because it's just too much noise. I wouldn't be able to
Yeah.
hear you.
No, we could see on the
You seem
screen.
Yeah.
We see him up there. Yes.
So, I mean, Rabbi kind of warned us constantly of the against the evil, and the evil is it's making its last stand, and it's making a very strong stand,
Right.
and that's the war now. It's the good against the evil. It's like one guy I saw. This guy wrote a thing. He says the Israeli army has soldiers who are lions, and officers or chief or the chief the high echelons, the chief of staff are a bunch of hyenas, and
Right.
and really that's it's incredible. These guys, I just can't believe it. I scratch my head and try to figure out how the biggest enemies are the guys who used to run the army and still run it.
Right.
And despite everything, we're winning the wars. I mean, if you don't see Hashem's hand in this whole thing,
Mhm.
you're blind. You're totally blind.
Right. Right. That's the deep state.
Yeah, it's real deep, real deep. But a
Yep.
lot of people are still filing in. Hey, how you doing? People are still filing in. Place is
Very good.
is gonna be full.
Yes.
And like I said, I think we have to figure out how we take over. Like I remember when Adir Zik, who was the man who created the Israeli TV, and he later was one of the main guys behind Arutz Sheva. And when Rabbi Kahane was murdered, he said that one day there's going to be a line from his grave to Tel Aviv, of people standing in line to say, "I'm sorry, you were right."
Wow.
And and despite the fact that we see again this massive amount of people that agree with you, you just have to say, I was at some party, and I was asked to speak, and people said to me, "So how do we solve the problem?" All I said was, "Kahane Tzadak." Kahane was right. They said, "Yeah, right. He was right." Okay, now what do we do? So I think that's the problem. Is that they all agree now he's right, but what do we do?
Mm-hmm.
How do we turn that understanding into action? And again, like I said, I think it's too late to think about doing it through the Knesset, doing it through the you were mentioning before referendum revolution. It's on sale tonight here. I see it's come out in a new format. I when I read that book, I said he was right on. Look,
Yeah.
you got to challenge them. You got to say, look, there's no democracy here. Give the people the right to give them a referendum. They'll never do that. Nothing. Never. It's been mentioned time and again, but they'll never give a referendum to these people. you know. And they keep using the term democracy, but there is no democracy here. It's a joke.
Right.
And
Right.
Rabbi Kahane said, okay, if they're not going to give you democracy, then you have no choice. You have to revolt. But you see, there's a problem here with the revolt, is that we don't want to harm other Jews, and that's what's going to happen in a revolt. You know, that's what's going to happen.
Right.
So somehow there's got to be some kind of revolt that's a bloodless revolt,
Right.
where Jews don't kill. That's what the goyim are waiting for. The enemies are waiting for it. You know, when they tried to do last year judicial reform, they were about to. They wanted the left wanted to bring about a civil war. They were gonna they wanted a coup. And they're constantly looking for any way possible to bring down Netanyahu, because they figure if they bring him down, then there'll be elections, and they'll do the same thing they did last time with Bennett and Lapid and Lieberman and the Arabs. I mean, imagine what they did that time. It was like amazing. We're counting the days for that to end.
Yes.
And that could happen again. There's a very good chance that could happen again. So we've got to be on our toes and figure out how do we get to the next stage.
Let me get Mayor to jump in and add to that. Mayor, the deep state in Israel. I mean, we were talking just last night about it. In fact.
Yeah, there's a remarkable juxtaposition of what's happened in the last 2 weeks between Israel and America. In America, 2 weeks ago, in fact, 2 weeks ago today, it was decided to take a move to the right. And by right, I mean both the right and the right in both contexts, with a capital R and a small r. What's amazing is, given the players who are going to become prominent in the next Trump administration, excuse me, there are two of them who've spoken in terms that many rabbis in Israel don't speak about the holiness of territories. We're talking about Mike Huckabee, who's coming in as the ambassador. He'll be the ambassador to Israel, who speaks about annexation, who speaks about an extension of Jewish sovereignty, who speaks about Hebron being a Jewish city, not a city of terrorists. A remarkable. And we've got the nominated Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, visited Israel, who speaks globally about the types of things that we envision Judea and Samaria being. And both of these people, and they represent also the position, I believe, of Mike Waltz, who's going to be the National Security Advisor, in which they basically think that whole concept of Oslo is 31 years old, is dead. Oslo is the appeasement that brought on this evil and the fighting to the Middle East. His alternative, Donald Trump, who I have said before is the best American president Israel's ever had, and I do believe the best president Israel will ever have. I'm concerned that Donald Trump is going to be interested in the art of the deal. And piece of Donald Trump is interested in bringing Saudi Arabia into the discussion. Donald Trump is not going to discussion without a quid pro quo. The quid pro quo that the Saudis have already told us they expect is that Israel will draw to the June 4th, 1967 law. This will be the beginning of the process on Palestinian peace and the self-gain because of the threat of Iran. They also want a nuclear capability, which ultimately turn into a nuclear military capability. If Donald Trump is so determined in getting the Saudis in what he envisions will be an extension or an expansion of the Abraham Accords,
Mayor, you're cutting in and out.
Who had a very good reputation in Israel and territories, that Jared Kushner is going to say to the Baruch Yosefs, the Baruch Yosefs, and the others, the Amar Ben Gvir's, he's going to say, fine, but we need to suspend right now the quest of sovereignty in Judea and Samaria. Too many in his go along. Just the notion the way of dismantling the steady effort for self-survival. We're interested in peace. The way that Al wants it done. We do everything. We put back.
The decision that I just want to know if I have to do something.
That's the stop. One other comment about the Knesset. As soon as the Knesset, there was a poll, every polls in the public. There was a poll published once again yesterday, and it shows you how many votes would Bibi get, how many votes would Naftali get, how many votes would Yair Lapid get, how many votes would Bennett get, and so on and so forth. Yoav Golan, the one thing is and I would say this closely resembles what Rabbi spoke about. The numbers at all. If you would ask someone post October 7th, what effect do you think this will have on the growth of the Israeli right wing, as evidenced by
Do I have to do something? I mean, I submitted all the documents that I had.
November 7th, everyone
All
would
the
have said
documents that I had, I submitted when I put the RR.
tremendous strengthening of the right wing, or what they call the far right wing, in the Knesset, and we've not seen that happen.
They have to do something. Guys, hear me? I mean, are we connected? Are we connected?
I am still on. I don't know.
Because there's a very bad connection. Mayor, are you guys on?
I don't know which mayor you're addressing. Mayor Jolovitz is here.
So I don't know. It's a bad connection. I'm gonna go in and participate.
Okay. Thank you so much.
So.
And we're back on. I don't know what happened.
Can you hear me?
I could hear you. Some kind of an internet glitch that froze everything, and now we're back on.
Okay.
So apologize to everyone that had to deal with that, but we're back on. As you can see, the hall is full now in Jerusalem for the rabbi. And as Baruch said, there are some Knesset members that came in now to attend. So Mayor, continue with what you were saying about the new administration coming in, super friendly for Israel, for everything, much of what the rabbi talked about. And, we still have those problems in Israel that they're trying to get rid of anyone on the right, trying to get rid of Bibi. It's just insane what's going on. They want the trial to go on, so he's going to be preoccupied with the trial, a nonsense trial, instead of prosecuting the war. How do you clean up the mess?
I'm not, excuse me, I'm not sure how much of what I said just a few minutes before was heard, but I concluded, and I will repeat just in case that there was a internet glitch, that what is of concern to me, which should be of concern to everybody, is the fact that post October 7th, if you would have asked anyone who is politically savvy, what is going to be the takeaway post October 7th, when the reality of the assault against Israel, the massacres, the pogroms that were committed on Israeli soil, one would have immediately assumed, and with a certain measure of justice, that this was going to have Israel turn to the far right simply because October 7th proved everything that the rabbi had spoken about. This was the nature of the beast. This is who the real Arab is. This whole concept that Israel had fooled itself into living for 31 years post-Oslo, this conceptia, as they refer to it in Israel, the concept which basically said that if you can keep the Arab neighbors across the lines in Gaza and perhaps elsewhere, well, in Judea and Samaria, if you can keep them employed, if their economic position is somehow bolstered from what it otherwise would have been, if you give them jobs in Israel, paying them significantly more than the monies that they would make in Gaza, it would somehow placate the hatred that they hold, a hatred which is endemic to their culture, to their ideology, to their religion. This is a religion, a political ideology, the two are the same, which basically recognizes that there's no place for any Jews in the Middle East. The nonsense that is pervaded by, and I hope that this doesn't seep into the thinking of the new administration that's coming in America, this nonsense that somehow this war that's being fought with the Arabs, defending itself against the Arabs, has anything to do with territory. Because the moment that you think it has anything to do with territory, the answer is rather simple. Well, where do we push which buttons do we push, and where do we move the lines in order to make them somehow satisfactory for both sides? Well, anyone who is a realist understands one doesn't have to be a pessimist or an optimist. One needs to be a realist. And if one is a realist, one understands that contrary to the thinking of the Western world, and much of what permeates the thinking in Israel itself, is that this occupation, which they bring back to June of 1967, is the cause of all these problems. Well, if the occupation post Six-Day War 1967 is the problem, as the world seems to believe that it is, and when I say the world, I'm talking about the entire Western world, then we have an issue in which the world doesn't remember that there was no peace in 1966 or 1956. In fact, there was no peace between Arab and Jew when Arabs were massacring Jews in pogroms in 1920 and 1921 and 1929, and in the Arab Revolt of 1936, 1938. There was no state of Israel at the time. What were the Arabs doing then, killing Jews? And the answer is the same thing that they do today. They don't recognize the fact that Israel or the Jews have a right to a state of their own in their inherent historic lands. One more point to bolster the argument that I'm making, which is an absolute absurd one, is the disconnect between Western thinking and the mind of the Islamic opponent that Israel faces. If you would ask anyone in the Western world, including whoever served in an American government, any correspondent, or ask anyone who sits in the Israeli Knesset and ask them, when did this evil occupation take place that we're trying to end? They will tell you it began in 1967. If you ask anyone of the Arab mind, when did this occupation begin?
48.
They will tell you that it began in 1948 with Israel, with the establishment of the State of Israel. And until we come to terms with that very, very, very simple understanding of the disconnect that the Arab doesn't think, and when I say Arab, I should add the Muslim, because we're talking also about the Islamic Republic of Iran. When what they think is what's important, not what BBC thinks. It isn't what Tony Blinken thinks. Tony Blinken believes that if Israel would only move certain lines, that if Israel would acquiesce to certain expectations made by the Arab world and agreed upon by the Western world, that somehow peace will automatically follow. This is a naivete which has caused the suffering that we've experienced in Israel. What we need in Israel is a mentality which allows us to understand the real nature of the enemy. And we don't have that. And if you look at the Knesset and its composition and the votes and where they're placed, look at the votes that Itamar Ben-Gvir, representing to a great degree what the rabbi was speaking about, and look at the balance, the rest of the Knesset, the rest of it, including religious parties, they don't seem to be on board. And that is a terrible, terrible insight into the world we live in and the world that we will continue to inherit. It's a terrible thing.
You know what? So yeah, that's a good point you make about the rabbis in Israel, that they're not really on board with Itamar Ben-Gvir and the vision of the rabbi. But with this new administration and people, like, it's insulting actually that you could have people like Mike Huckabee, people who are not Jewish, that could be lecturing the Jews about the Jewish claim to Israel and that it's all ours and should be annexed and the temple should be built, and Jewish prayer on Har Bayit, you just want an extra hour or something, or more people that could be allowed up. They look at it and saying, huh? What do you mean? You're not allowed to have your tallis and tefillin up there, and you can't blow a shofar up there? What kind of nonsense is this? Unrestricted entry for Jews. So when this administration's going to be taking over, do you see that there will, and the discussions will be sort of what we were just talking about? Do you see that the rabbis will start moving in that direction?
Yeah, Mayor, I see this in two ways.
Yep.
They're opposite sides, perhaps, of the same coin. On the one side, and I mentioned this to you when we did a previous podcast, is the remarkable good fortune that we have with the election results of November 5th in the United States. What Israel, we will never know, and thank God that we will never know the significance of the evil that would have been perpetrated against Israel had there been a re-election of the Democratic regime. Had Kamala Harris and her Muslim advisors, Kamala Harris, who knows nothing about anything, Kamala Harris, who I once commented couldn't find Gaza on a map of Gaza, would have relied on all her policy decision makers, and we know who they are, the Phil Gordons of the world and such. And these are people who blame Israel for the lack of peace in the Middle East. So the greatest good of what happened in the election in America 2 weeks ago was what we averted. We averted a disaster, as it would have been for Israel. The flip side of that coin is that there's a failure to recognize on the part of the Western world that this notion that everybody talks about, this two-state solution, which I have in many of my op-eds and the radio shows that I do, have spoken about a two-state illusion or two-state delusion. The reason that this is important is that most people who hear two-state solution, well, that sounds wonderful. It sounds wonderful. There's going to be a state for the Jews and a state for the Arabs. Never mind that it'll be their 22nd or 23rd state. That isn't the issue. If you would ask these same political pundits, do you think that there's any measure of justice in the fact that Israel is a state, democratic in its nature, almost to a fault, so much so that you have an indigenous Arab Israeli population, which is represented in Knesset, which refer to the Hamas terrorists as martyrs, where Arabs in Israel have every privilege of citizenship, including going to the Knesset and calling the righteous members of the Knesset terrorists. And juxtaposed to that is the Palestine that they envision. And the Palestine that they envision will be, and the Arabs have told us as much, and everybody knows this, but it's not spoken about. That Palestine, if it ever came to fruition, would be Judenrein. It would be Judenrein. It would be free of Jews. And if you ask someone, a correspondent at BBC, or Tony Blinken, and say, is it really fair? Is it proper? Is it right that Israel is a nation which serves both Arabs and Jews with equal rights, and Palestine, as you envision, as you want it to exist, will be ethnic cleansing? Not a single Jew, no Jew will live in his historic biblical land. No Jew living outside of the 67 borders. And again, I remind you, for the Arabs, not even within the 67 borders. Do they find this to be a problem? And the answer, tragically, is no. They don't. They don't. What they are looking for is peace and quiet, and it always comes at the expense of Israel. It was once said that the Arabs want peace in the Middle East without Israel. And even that isn't true, by the way. If you look at the conflicts among Arabs, they want peace in the Middle East without Israel, which isn't true. Take a look at what Lebanon had become. Take a look at Iran, Iraq. Look at everything. Look at Syria. This is nonsense. The notion that if Israel agrees to terms which, by truncating its own borders and threatening its own existence, that will placate the Arabs and therefore peace will follow. This is truly a demented understanding of both human nature and Islam.
They kill each other in Arab countries, Arab Muslim countries.
Yeah.
It's nonstop.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even in Israel, you have these criminal gangs of Israel has been actually, this is remarkable, in the Arab towns, predominantly Arab towns in Israel. We're not talking about in the so-called territories.
Yeah.
You have Arab crimes committed against Arabs, to the point where they've actually asked the Israeli police to come in and solve it because the Arabs are killing Arabs. I
Yeah.
think the Israeli police have other things to do. Anyhow, yeah, like prosecuting a prime minister. Listen, what the rabbi, we've known the teachings of Rabbi Meir Kahane, because we're speaking today on the occasion of his Yortzeit. We've known the teachings for decades and decades and decades, and we're still waiting. We're still waiting for the rest of the world not only to say Kahane Tzedek, Kahane was right, but to do something about it. The reason Rabbi Kahane was banned in 1988, when he was trying to run for a second term in the Knesset, and mind you, even the majority party at the time, Likud, with Yitzhak Shamir, they were in favor of his being banned because he was taking votes away from them. What votes was he anticipated to gather in the 1988 elections if he was allowed to stand for election, and he wasn't? He was dismissed. He was banned. Well, the two leading Israeli papers at the time, Idiot Achronot and also Ma'ariv, projected him having between 11 and 13 seats. 11 and 13 seats in 1988 would have made him the third, would have made Kach, his party. People were voting for him more than the party. It would have made it the third largest party in Israel. 13 seats, which is, think about it, this was 1988. Okay, it was 1988. It was right after the beginning of the first Intifada, and we all know, of course, what followed with that, the second Intifada, so on and so forth. And yet today, even today, post-October 7th, the greatest tragedy in Israel's modern-day history, the victims that we saw on film and the manner in which they were destroyed. Mm-hmm. Even today, a poll taken in Israel shows that what they refer to as a pejorative Kahaneism, they refer to it as Kahaneism, even today, post-October 7th, according to the election, the predictions, the polls, assuming that they are reliable, the party which is most closely associated with Rabbi Kahane would not get the votes that he was going to get in 1988 and growing. Right. And that does not speak well for Jews. I once wrote an op-ed, and I've often used this in my lectures in which I lecture about the Middle East. I talk about the myth of Jewish intelligence. And one only needs to turn on the news in Israel every day or pick up some social media news report about Israel, and you will understand the myth of Jewish intelligence.
Yes, 100%.
Tragic.
Well, we've gone over an hour already.
Yeah.
I don't see Baruch here, I think probably because of the interference that came from the internet connection. But we're able to see. Yeah. What's that?
Baruch announced that he was going to go inside and do what he needed to do there. So he's done. Okay?
Yeah. All right. Okay, so Mayor, final words.
The final words, well, with a measure of optimism that I haven't had in a long time, I don't expect the United States, I never did expect the United States to save Israel. But I do want a regime in America, a government in America, a cabinet in America that deals in foreign affairs, well, actually also domestic affairs. They need to take care of the anti-Semitism in America on campuses. But when it comes to foreign affairs, as a final word, I will say this. I want an American administration. I want Trump 47 to be remembered for this and this alone, that it was the government that allowed Israel to do what Israel needed to do to take care of business. That's all I want. And given, because we certainly haven't had that for the 4 years of the Biden administration, we've had quite the opposite. Where other reporters and other columnists and other analysts were speaking often about the Biden administration being at times obstacles or hindrance to Israel's war efforts, I described them, and I think we can see now that it was certainly and unfortunately true. They were the enemy. They were the enemy. They were the enemy and opponent of Israel's victory and Israel's destiny. I'm hoping that Trump 47 will be a president who will allow Israel to take care of business. And then I will turn to Israel and say, now you have a president who's keeping his hands off your destiny. Do what you need to do.
And the plan from Rabbi Kahane would be, I believe, embraced, listened to certainly by this administration, because what it would be is a Jewish common sense revolution in Israel. The enemies of Israel live within the borders. Get rid of them, deport them. You can't have people that want your destruction. Like we said about Harabayat, it's just ridiculous. The restrictions on Jews. It's not like we're saying we want to go to Mecca and change Mecca into a holy place for Jews or build a synagogue there, small, large, medium. No, we just want what's ours. And that's it. And that's the simple point. We want Judaism to flourish in Israel and be respected and not spat upon. We don't want politicians in Israel that degrade Judaism at all. And we certainly don't want anyone from the Arab Muslim camp standing up in the Knesset and vilifying our IDF and our heroes and our claim to Israel. We don't want that. And that there are laws, in fact, in the Knesset that aren't implemented. There's also what we talk about, the IRA definition of anti-Semitism. And it clearly lays out basic fundamentals of anti-Semitism that are beyond the pale. And these Knesset members from the Arab parties certainly violate the IRA definition of anti-Semitism, and it's not implemented by the government of Israel or any government of Israel, and it should be. That prerequisite, one of the prerequisites of being a member of the Knesset is abiding by the basics of the IRA definition of anti-Semitism. Doesn't meet the standard at all. So let me say to everyone, please share this video, be it from Twitter, our website, YouTube, Facebook. Please share it. We'll reach a lot of people, a lot more people. Get the message out. And the message in simple terms is Kahane Sadek. Kahane was right. And it's just basic common sense. And a lot of politicians in the Western world are running with a platform, a common sense, basic platform. That's a common sense platform.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor, for joining. Thank you very much. We'll do it again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.